This is a presentation of SBE 15, New York City.
I'm going to hand the reins of the meeting over to Bear Poth from LumenServe.
Thank you,
Bear, you're up.
Conrad. Thanks, guys, for hosting us tonight. We appreciate it. Love New York City for sure. Everybody does. I'm in Austin, Texas today, which is where our company's headquartered, although we do business all over the country. And it's good to be home. I'm joined by my colleague, Mike Thompson, who's in Atlanta, and he handles really the eastern side of the country, largely from a sales and marketing and account management perspective. Our company is really unique. We focus only on tower lighting, and we do something that nobody else does. We buy lighting systems for tower owners, and we operate them and take care of them no matter what goes wrong, and make sure that they're in full compliance. And as part of that role, you know, we are totally immersed in obstruction lighting. And we've spoken with, I was telling Conrad and Jeff, probably over 30 different SBEs across the country. We've probably done 3 in the last week or so. Things are starting to open up a little bit. Some of them have been person. Most of them of late have been still in Zoom. And so we've been to, you know, the wood panels of the WGBH in Boston, all the way down to a catfish parlor in Beaumont, Texas, which had pretty good food, by the way. And one thing I'll say that I like this. I am an engineer by background, but, you know, there's all kinds of engineers out there. And I think that I would put SBE engineers up against anybody in terms of the breadth of the things that you have to have knowledge of. I mean, you need to know about acoustics, you need to know about video in some instances, you need to know about facilities, you need to know about power, you need to know about internet protocol, you need to know about information technology, and also, of course, RF, which is, you know, a lot of folks don't know anything about that. So we tend to see a group of very experienced engineers and asking good questions. So if you guys have any questions along the way, certainly do that. We're going to have 3 basic topics that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my screen. I've got a presentation to share with everybody. So that is a beacon that we own looking out towards Ray, North Dakota, almost up in Alaska. That is an L864, L865 dual mode beacon. It's actually an older photograph. It's a couple of years old, and the technology has already changed thanks to changes in regulation. And I'm going to explain that in some detail here. But we actually own and operate that beacon on behalf of the customer, and we're the one that paid for it on the upfront. We take care of it and make sure it's in full compliance. And so what we're going to talk about really is 3 different things today. One is just the rules, how the rules have been changing, some of the little known changes that I'd like to review. Secondly, talk about technology, in particular, some of the changes that have come about over the last year or so. And then thirdly, this new and different way to provide a service that allows you to look at your tower lighting maybe from a different perspective. I like to use the analogy of, you know, Uber in some instances versus having to buy a car and find parking and maintain it, et cetera. So that's what Mike will be talking about. I'm going to talk about the first 2 pieces. And so we'll kick it off with the rules piece. The history of regulation on tower lighting is, you know, the FCC, when towers were starting to be built, came out with a set of standards. There's sort of a legacy standard. There's still a lot of towers that are governed under those. You'll see in your ASR registration, you'll see, painting and lighting under FCC paragraphs, 1, 3, 5 and whatnot. And then, so what we have is we've built a portal that has really all of the helpful information that you need regarding tower lighting. And our portal is located at lumenserve.com. It's free. Just come and use it. And what we've done on there is on the very bottom, you've got the legacy FCC lighting system standard. And then it goes all the way up. Starting in 1972, the FAA started to govern the obstruction lighting piece of it with the circular they came out, which is the AC 7460-1A was the first revision. We just refer to it shorthand as the 7460A. And then, periodically they would come up with updates, and it came all the way up to the most recent one, which came out in November of 2020, which is the 7460-1M as in Mary. And so there's two of them that we're going to focus on today, which is Rev L, which came out in November of 2016, and Rev M, which came out in 2020, because those will have the biggest impact in terms of things that you just may want to be aware of, or maybe have opportunities for you. We also have links to, the different FAA and FCC websites for your antenna structure and registration piece, as well as other important data. If you look at the latest revision of it, which is revision M, the biggest changes really had to do with IR, or infrared specifications for the LEDs. So if you think about the human eye has the ability to see, normal light, which includes red, which is why we can see the red LED light, or the red LED lights with our regular eye. If you look at the an IR, which is a night vision goggles, and what this was all sort of necessitated, this is the two views that you see here. The view on the left is what a person with night vision goggles, and this could be emergency responder, it could be safety, border patrol, somebody that's doing something with night vision goggles in the air, is they can't see things as well. On the picture on the right, you can see they can see the mountain in front of them, as well as the lights. Now, the lights that they can see very clearly are incandescent lights that are giving off a heat signature. Now, the only positive thing about an incandescent bulb, I think, in the grand scheme of things, is that they do put off a heat signature and are easy to see by night vision goggles. But that means you're consuming more electricity and all the negatives associated with incandescent bulbs. With night vision goggles, when you have LEDs out there, you cannot see those very clearly. So what they FAA did is they came out with a briefing, and it really started way back in 2016. And by the time it made its way all the way through, it became an engineering specification such that the obstruction lights for LEDs, going forward, and this is a requirement over about the last year, is that they required that they have an IR LED signature that they outpulse, because the night vision goggles can see those. So you won't be able to see this with the naked eye, but the guy with the night vision goggles will be able to see it. So it's basically a way, specifically for them. So it won't affect the public in any way. It'll only be the folks with the night vision goggles. And to do that, you had the initial way that was done was, and I'm looking at Dowlight here. Dowlight is the group that we primarily use for our lighting systems. We don't manufacture lighting systems. We own and operate and install them in bulk across the country. And what they did is, for their standard beacon here, as an example, they added an infrared module to the top of it. And so that was no change to the form factor. You saw the same red and white light output with the naked eye, but you also got an infrared output that a pilot with night vision goggles could see. There were 5 IR LEDs on that. It was fully certified to all the FAA specifications. And then that way you could have proper night operation as well as an IR signature out there. What's happened since then is they have eliminated this beacon, this little infrared module, and they've actually, for the LED themselves, they're putting infrared LEDs on there. So if you go back to that very first picture on my very first slide, this is a typical beacon today that you would see. And what you would see is the way this lighting system works is you've got these curved lenses. There's 5 of them. And then on the flat part, there's LEDs, and they actually shine up, hit this mirror, and go out and up. Okay, and so you can see the yellow or whitish ones are the ones for the white part during the day. And then every now and then you see a red looking one or a solid color, and that's for the red light at night. And you have more of the white lights because you need a brighter light during the day, 20,000 candelas versus a red light, which is going to be, it's considerably less than that. And now they have this set up to where the LEDs themselves actually have infrared interspersed in there. So you're getting infrared at night as well, along with the red that the naked eye can see. You're getting infrared that the night vision goggles can see. So there's some interesting things to know about Circular M. So as I mentioned, Circular M came out in 2020. It was mostly minor changes that don't impact most tower owners. The bulk affected temporary structures such as cranes. The biggest addition was the infrared for the LED piece. The old circulars that you're governed in are grandfathered. So that's an important point. So if you got a lighting system out there, you don't have to go out there and upgrade it to infrared. Any new LED that is installed, any new LED systems that are installed on a tower are required to have the IR spec going forward. Now, there are some instances where you would have an existing LED system, and let's say one of the mid beacons were to fail. There is a special notice that is given in the regulations that says if your mid beacon fails and you're going to go replace that mid beacon, let's take just as an example, a 500-foot dual mode tower, an E2 is egg 2. If the middle beacon were to fail, you'd say, hey, I want to replace that. Well, they don't allow you to replace it with a beacon that has IR unless you replace the beacon at the top as well, because they don't want the night vision goggle wearer to see an IR beacon at the midpoint and think there's not one at the, there's nothing above it. So that is a specific exclusion there, or specification in the rules. So the rules that I would say that everybody on this call needs to certainly be aware of is that any new LED systems that you install need to be IR certified installations. And we started installing them back in 2020, probably almost a year before it was required. We've been installing these things because we had access to FAA certified systems. And that if you have an existing system, your grandfather on it, if you don't make any changes, if you're not replacing it with LEDs, you're fine to stay as you're at it with your lighting system. But if you decide to replace an LED at the midpoint, anywhere of the system, and you replace it with one with an IR, then you have to replace the ones above it as well, so you don't have a false reading there. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody in regards to that. Does anybody have any questions on that piece of it? That's probably the biggest change in the Circular M. Okay, and move on to Circular L, which was the previous circular, and go over some of the changes that occurred in that, because I think they can sometimes be relevant and they can present some opportunities for folks. Circular L came out in 2016. One of the things that came out of it was the avian standard. So what they did is the FAA ran a set of studies, and they found that the solid burning sidelights, which are the L810 beacons, so those are the beacons that, using that same example that I had, if I had a 500-foot tower and it was an E2 and it flashed white during the day and red at night. Well, at night, when it flashed red, you would have a red beacon at the top and red beacons at the midpoint. And then you may have solid burning sidelights at the 1/4 and the 3/4 level. And you've seen those, out there. Well, the solid burning sidelights can be eliminated under this avian standard if you roll your determination up to the most recent determination or revision, which is Rev M, or it became active in Rev L. And what they did is they effectively eliminated the requirement for those solid burning sidelights. The other thing that they did is, and they did that in every situation except for two. One are the painted towers less than 350 feet, where you have a red beacon at the top and used to have two solid burning or three solid burning sidelights at the midpoint. That now requires that those solid burning sidelights would be flashing. Okay. The other exception is the dual mode under 350 feet, where you have a white light at the top and during the day, and at night you have a red beacon at the top, and you used to have solid burning sidelights at the midpoint. Now those flash in synchronicity with the top beacon. So if, what they said is that they requested the tower owners have a plan to move to the avian standard. In almost all instances, when we have a customer that upgrades with us, we'll move them to the latest revision, and it will include moving to the avian standard. And in many cases, that means you're getting rid of side lights. So you have less load on your tower, you have less power consumption. So it's an example of a regulation that is less onerous, certainly on you because you have less lighting, and then also on the birds from an environmental perspective. So that was the avian standard piece that kicked in 2016. The second thing that was part of that is prior to Rev L, there was a requirement for towers over 500 feet to use high intensity lighting. And high intensity lighting is considerably higher for dual mode, for the white lighting. You're talking about over 200,000 candelas for those arrays versus 20,000 for medium intensity. Well, starting in Rev L in 2016, the high intensity requirement was moved from 500 feet up to 700 feet. And there's still some folks out there that have towers between 500 and 700 feet that have high intensity lighting on it. And that's a huge opportunity to save costs by upgrading to a medium intensity tower on that. So now you've got two styles of tower here for dual mode that are most common. For under 350 feet, you've got the E1 style tower, dual mode light at the top, flashing and synchronicity, L810 side lights at the midpoint. And then you have the E2 tower, which has a dual mode at a beacon at the top and dual mode beacons at the midpoint. And you've eliminated the side lights at the 1/4 and the 3/4. And everything under 700 feet now, can be medium intensity lighting. So that's a positive development from the tower owner's perspective. The other thing that happened in Rev L was a specification clarification on what an obstruction is. In the past, there was general language about having an obstruction. And the specific language says that the widest structure appurtenance, lightning rod or antenna, that can be placed in front of an obstruction light. And they're excluding the L810, the side lights. They're talking about a beacon. Without significantly blocking the obstruction light's visibility should be no wider than 7/8 of an inch. Okay, and due to their smaller sizes, the L810 side light should not be blocked by any structure. So if you look at the picture in the top right-hand corner, you can see a scenario that's repeated way too often. That's a nested light that's surrounded in this instance by a cellular array. And so that is an issue because those obstructions are greater than 7 inches. You can also have examples where you have larger than 7/8 of an inch that's blocking something like in the bottom right corner picture. And there's really two ways to solve this issue. One way is with a beacon extension. And we do those all the time for customers where we find this is an issue. And that's where you take the top beacon, you literally extend it above the obstruction. Normally we limit that to 6 feet on these types of towers. The other way you can solve the problem is by having what's called a +1. That's when you add an additional beacon to the top. And that's a way to solve the problem where you can get visibility there. So what really happened in revision L was a clarification of the rule as it being 7/8 of an inch. The other thing that they clarified is on the quarterly inspections, there's still a requirement to do that, is it says to ensure proper candela output for fixtures with incandescent lamps. So if you still have incandescent lamps, it says the voltage provided to the lamp filament should not vary by more than ±3% on the lamp's rated voltage. The input voltage should be measured at the closest disconnecting means to the lamp fixture with the lamp operating during normal hours of operation. For strobes, it's ±10%. This is not an issue with LEDs. With LEDs and the systems we install, we got the ability to do a remote test and to measure everything to make sure everything's, you're getting the proper light output. But this is for the older incandescent systems and strobe systems, a requirement on your quarterly inspection, use a clamp meter and measure that. The final area of just being cognizant of was in the 2016 Rev L was a requirement for a biennial lens inspection, biennial with a BIE, meaning every 2 years. And you can see from some of these lenses on the right-hand side that you can get situations where the lenses are just in really bad shape. So the one on the bottom right, we pulled that one out of a company actually it was out in West Texas. And that thing was still flashing. It was flashing like every 26 seconds, completely smashed, still functioning. But clearly it wasn't doing the right kind of light output. And that's the worst case example of why you have these biennial lens inspections. The one on the top left is a little less obvious. What's happened there is some of these older lighting systems had various forms of plastic that when they heated up, they would cause residue from that plastic to, get into that lens area and then cover up that lens and fog it up. You can also get crazing on some of the older plastic types, or just have a broken beacon altogether. So the requirement is that every 24 months, or when the fixture fails, that you inspect this thing for UV damage, cracks, crazing, dirt buildup to ensure certified light output has not deteriorated. And lenses that have cracked, UV damage, crazing, or excessive should be cleaned or replaced. And we normally do this inspection for our customers, as it says, every 2 years, typically with a drone. And what we do is we fly all around it and take good photographs, and then we log it. We put it into the logbook for the customer. One of the things that we've done is if you look at this business, the regulations for this are over 100 pages now, and there's no one likes to read through a 100-page federal document. But what we try to do is simplify it and then sort of highlight the main things that a tower owner would need to know. And so we've created a poster, and we offer it on a complimentary basis to all you guys. You can go through Conrad or Jeff or whoever, or send it to me directly or Mike directly, and we'll get you one. And these are pretty cool. They're 24 by 36 inches, or 11 by 17 if you want the smaller version. And the way we've designed it to make it real easy to understand, and this is a great way to train people or to explain to your boss or just a new person what kind of tower you have or which one you're looking at. On the left-hand side, you get the legacy towers, which are the A-style painted towers. And of course, those go from the A0 all the way up to an A6, which is up to 2,200 feet tall. And they're marked by aviation orange and white bands, along with red beacons and side lights, depending on the size at night. And then what we did is we took the green column right here, and these are all your medium intensities. Okay, and this is set up for the most current revision of the circular. And the medium intensities are 700 feet and less. And so on the top, or in this column right here, you have your medium intensities. On the right two columns, you have your high intensities. Okay, so those are over 700 feet. And then the top row is white day, white night. So that's white all the time. And the bottom row is dual mode. So, if someone told me that they had a 650-foot dual mode tower, I'd know that it's medium intensity, it's less than 700 feet, it's dual mode. And I'd come here and it's at E2. And if you go to our website, you can see all the blow up of each one of these illustrations. The other thing that we've included in this poster that's available to you guys is the compliance checklist. Okay, and so that's up in the top left-hand corner. And the compliance checklist is just as a reminder of some of the things you need to be aware of. One is you need to monitor your lighting systems. And if you have a qualifying outage, you need to ensure a notice to airman is filed within 30 minutes. A qualifying outage is defined typically as a flashing, something that's required to flash is no longer flashing. And it's no longer flash, or it may not be flashing in the right sequence, or it may not be flashing bright enough for whatever reason, but it's a flashing light. That's when you need to issue a NOTAM. If it's a solid burning L810, you need to get it fixed, but that's not a notamable event, to use that as a verb. But when you do that, you're creating a daily log of that. We do all this electronically and supply it and make it real time, and then provide a quarterly report. But you need to keep those logs for at least 2 years. We keep them infinitely. And you need to do quarterly inspections on site. You also, if you have a painted tower, need to do an annual paint inspection at the top of the tower. That's only for your style A towers, the aviation orange and white. And then every 2 years, do a biennial lens inspection. Biennial can mean both 6 months and 2 years, but every 2 years. And then keep your logs, as I said, for 2 years. So this poster is available for everybody who wants one, and would be, we could just mail it to you, and we'd send it in a tube. So I'm going to stop right there, Conrad and Jeff, and see if anybody has any questions on the first part of the presentation.
Any questions, anyone?
Okay.
John Frex. John, you've got to have a question, no?
Okay, good. We're going to move to technology next. And let's see here. So we're going to talk about the technology piece of it. There's really 3 different types of technology still. There's the incandescent bulb, the xenon bulb, and the LED. And of course, the LED now has the IR capability that's built into it and required for the new installations. The incandescent bulbs, you've seen those in the bottom left-hand corner. I've actually got one of these in my backyard. I can see it from my desk here. I don't have it turned on yet, but and it makes for kind of a fun thing. And people say, what kind of business you are? And you go turn the light switch on. And what that is that's an old Huey Phillips system with incandescent bulbs. They're over 600 watts each, multiple bulbs in it. It's got a Fresnel lens with real glass. It chews up a lot of power, pretty heavy fixture, and just the older technology. You've got other versions like the one next to it where you sometimes have a mixture of LEDs and incandescent. You have different flavors of those things, and eventually we've moved into an era of the LED fixture as well as the high intensity. I'm going to show you some examples of those. But if you think about the majority of the installed base out there, it's still incandescent, some xenon strobe, high power consumption, shorter life. You get all of these sort of mechanical, physical limitations for filaments burning out, broken electrodes. You can run into EMI, RFI interference issues. And then from a light pollution perspective, there's a dramatic difference because a system like this older system right here, or any of these, are much more omnidirectional nature. They do have some Fresnel lens, built in there, kind of like the old lighthouse to try to create visibility, but that is really surpassed when you look at what happens with the LED piece. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a moment. From an environmental perspective and other characteristics, the LED is the smallest light source available. ROHS is a environmental standard. There's no fragile glass, no corrodable contacts, shock and vibration resistance, and with a long life. And what drove this as an ability is just the increase of the luminous efficacy, which is the lumens per watt, has steadily gone up considerably. So you've gone from a time where that number was less than 20 to, in 2014 it was greater than 160. And that's when actually prior to that, the first LED that was approved for usage was actually back in 1999. And so now you have these very low wattage, great output technologies. And if you look at the evolution of what's happened, the top rows are the LA64, which is the red medium intensity ones, and the bottom row are the dual mode ones, which are red at night and white during the day, medium intensities. And they just continued to progress from these larger systems back in 2007 down to what the current systems look like. If you look at the system that we deploy, which is the dial-light system, this is the blow up of that first picture. As I mentioned earlier, you've got these 5 curved mirrors there. You've got the LEDs. You're actually seeing the front of the LEDs shining at the camera that took this picture at, 300 or 400 or 500 feet above ground. It's got a hermetic seal around it. This plastic right here is designed, and we know from experience, to not have any of the issues that you experience with, the front of your vehicle on your headlights. If you cracked open this thing and open up the head, you'll find that this is a dumb device. It has no smart chips. It has no power supplies. It doesn't have anything that can break. It has simply a surge protector. And so all the intelligence and more likely to break things are down on the bottom. You still run into issues and things that and with our assurance warranty, we sometimes have to replace beacons, and our assurance warranty includes protection against lightning and other things like that. But this is a smart and good design to really be efficient. If you look at the issue on light pollution, the definition of light pollution is as you take distance away from the tower, what does the human eye see down on the ground? You want, to be able to see it when you're up in the air across from it. So if you look at the beacons that we're deploying, if you were to take one of those and set it on a bar stool in a room and turn off the lights of the room, but turn on the beacon, you'd literally see a line around the room at the height of that beacon. The light goes predominantly out, a little bit up. And so it's a patented optics that are there. And so if you look at a dial light, the amount of light pollution, and this is measured in millifoot candles, which is almost flat, even when you're under the tower, all the way out to a mile out, as opposed to an incandescent beacon where it's very high as you get close to the tower. And then eventually it kind of fiddles out because you're getting far enough away where you can't see it as clearly. And what I've experienced in real life is that we'll go out and we'll turn up a tower, like say a 450-foot tower during the middle of the day, and you'll have a white light that you'd be expecting to see, and you're standing underneath the tower and you can't see it. So you start walking away, and you get a football field away and you can't see it, 2 football fields away, you can't see it. And you may have to walk a while, you can see it. And so there's a lot of instances where people say, hey, your light's out, and we're like, well, you just can't see it, and we can see electronically. And then, you get far enough away from it and you'll be able to see that it's there. So these are community friendly optics in that regards. The beacons that I was showing you there are the beacons, for medium intensity. We also have high intensity. High intensity, remember, today is anything over 700 feet. And a typical high intensity beacon is set up like this, to where you would have 3 different arrays, and each array has 3 different elements on it. So if you have 3 arrays, each array is responsible for 120 degrees. And then if you have 3 elements within it, each one of those is responsible for 40 degrees. So you may be used to seeing the older xenon type systems that are out there, and it's been replaced by these. You can see the ice shields above it. The main difference between high intensity and medium intensity from a powering perspective is the high intensities, due to the I²R loss, are use the existing powering system on the tower, and then there's a power supply for each one of these, and then you're typically running DC up to these from that power supply, but you're using the higher voltage power on a high intensity source. So you might be 220 or even or 480 or 3-phase power there. And so these systems right here have a dramatically different power consumption and ability to be easily deployed. And they're the rock solid systems out there for the high intensities, and they're LEDs, so they're different form factor and everything than you'll see on the medium intensity systems. From an environmental perspective or an ecology perspective, we see up to 90% reduction in electrical expenses, depending on what we're going from and to. A reduction in light pollution in the community, disposal considerations if you're not out there replacing your bulbs and having trucks drive out to replace them. Going to the avian standard, help solve the bird issue that we talked about, reduce emissions and those sorts of things. One of the things that we've done a really good job of with a lot of our customers is people with painted towers. I'll go back to a previous slide. Is we have a program called Never Paint Your Tower Again. And that's where you take a tower that's currently a painted tower and an A-style tower, and we move it to a dual mode tower. And that works really efficiently for a lot of different customers because we're seeing the costs for tower climbs to go dramatically up. We've seen an increase over the last probably couple of years by about 70% of the underlying costs for tower climbers. For painting a typical guide tower, we would normally look at a cost of about $20 a square foot. And I'm not using New York prevailing wages here. I'm kind of looking at like middle of America average. And then if you look at what number we would talk about today, it's about $30. And that number, will probably continue to go up. And so if you have a painted tower, you need to perform a regular paint inspection at the midpoint of the tower or higher. And that costs you money to do the paint inspection. And then the typical paint life, we look at it about 7 years on the average. So if you take $30 a foot times your tower height and every 7 years, that's a pretty big capital cost. And so what we do is have a lot of our customers, we work with them, we do all the paperwork, we have them move over to the dual mode tower. And then, if you've got one that also has side lights on it that are solid burning side lights, you eliminate those by going to the dual mode. And that gets rid of lights altogether. And so you have less lights on it, you have LED, and you don't have to paint it anymore. That's only relevant if you've got if you got a galvanized tower. If you got a black iron type tower, you're still going to have to paint, for corrosion prevention in some amount. So some of those people like to keep them as A-style towers. So with that, I'm going to pause once again and see, are there any questions for that piece of it? Okay. If there's not, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Mike, and we're going to talk about tower lighting as a service. Mike?
Great. Thanks, Bear. And got 15 minutes. So Jeff and Conrad, if we need to cut, just give us a sign and we'll stop.
Yeah, we go right up to the top of the hour. So,
okay.
That I think that'll work.
Great. A little more background on the company. We've been in business about 8 years and have between 700 and 800 towers that we service now. And it's generally in 3 different buckets. The first is radio and television is about a third of our business. A third of our business is vertical real estate. The companies just lease out space to AT&T and T-Mobile. And then a third of our business is in the public space, including a lot of emergency management entities, a lot of police departments. We do the University of Wisconsin, and we do a lot of local county governments. And we are actually in negotiations with a police department in New York, less than 60 miles from downtown New York City. So we hope to have some more New York customers pretty soon. We have all the PBS broadcasters in New Hampshire, and we have probably about 40 county governments in Pennsylvania right down the road from you all. So the model works for everybody. And Bear? So the tower lighting as a service model works for everybody. And we a big part of our program, our tower lighting as a service program, is compliance. And we have 2 network operations centers. One is virtual that's set up, and then one in Austin, Texas. And so the towers will be monitored 24/7 by 365. We would keep all your logs for 2 years, and we would poll the tower every 5 minutes. And more importantly, we would give you the reports that are needed by the FAA and kind of keep you out of trouble with any FAA issues. These red dots are actually LumenServe installations. And it's actually, we're moving so fast, we really haven't even updated all of them. Interesting to point out in Iowa, we were selected by a contractor for the FirstNet network, and all those are the first responder network sites, and we put up 80 towers in about 1.5 years out there. So we're very proud of that. And tower lighting as a service is something that is unique to LumenServe. We invented it. There's no other companies that do it like we do. We register the name, we copyrighted the name, and we actually, there's nobody else that does it like we are. And the model seems to work for everybody. Like I said, all different verticals of businesses, but it includes a brand new LED lighting system installed, a parts and labor assurance warranty. No matter what happens with that tower lighting system, we would take care of it, no questions asked. and we would do all your compliance and monitoring, and that's almost a full-time job there. And then we would do the lighting inspections, as Bear pointed out, and we bundle that all into a tower lighting as a service bundle with no upfront cost. And so we take all the 8 other vendors that you're talking to get all that stuff done, and we take all that off your plate. Everybody these days has 5 different jobs, so we would take the headaches off of tower lighting. Here's what tower lighting as a service includes in more detail. It would start with an engineering walk. We would come to New York City area, and we would do an engineering diagram, and that you would sign off on. You would tell us where you want the boxes placed, either inside the shelter, outside the shelter. We would do the measurements as far as cabling, et cetera. We would take the old lighting system down, and if you wanted it for your deck, like Bear or Doc, we could give it to you, or we would take it away and dispose of it in an eco-friendly way. The kit includes everything. We're not going to nickel and dime you for extra brackets or cabling. With the exception of high intensity lights, we would assume that the cabling and the conduit is intact. We would quote that separately if you wanted it. But the installation is comprehensive, and that's even if we're weathered out for a few days. And I've lived in New York City. I know what kind of weather you guys get up there. And if we're stuck up there an extra week or so, that's on us. So we're not going to charge anything extra. The assurance warranty is truly comprehensive. It's no fault if there's a board that is blown out in the rural areas. We have a lot of deer hunters that shoot the lights out. That's all on us. And lightning strikes, weather-related hurricanes, weather, that's all on us to take care of. And there's no 800 numbers or cards to fill out. We would just come fix it, and we would know exactly what's going on with the tower, since we would have it under compliance and monitoring, and we would be polling the tower every 5 minutes. So in many cases, we would know that the tower is out before you do, and be able to start monitoring it and start figuring out what we would need to repair. And in some case, we can actually do remote troubleshooting with the tower, and at the very least know what kind of crew to bring to come fix it. And then FA inspections, as Bear mentioned, those are quarterly on site. Those are optional for tower lighting as a service, but they are good value if you want them included. And the 3 different options we price our quotes at are 2 versions of tower lighting as a service. The first is our most popular, and actually our lowest price as well. And that includes everything on the previous couple slides. And we would actually own, operate, maintain, upgrade, and take care of everything related to your tower lighting system. And you would just pay us a service fee each month. And there's no upfront fee for you. And if you're doing 3 or 4 towers, those checks can have a lot of digits in it. And it makes our tower lighting as a service program makes them much more affordable. At the end of 5 years, the rate would go up 4%. And that's all spelled out in the agreement, so you know exactly what you're paying for. And there's not a lot of companies that will tell you what you're going to be paying over the next, or for the lifetime of the agreement. So that's the least expensive way to go. The middle option is very popular as well, and that's you pay the tower lighting service a fee for 5 years, and then at the end of 5 years, you own the lighting system, and the asset reverts over to you. It's spelled out in the contract, and you would not have had to pay anything up front. And at the end of 5 years, you can elect to keep us on for monitoring, and you can add back the assurance warranty and the inspections if you want to, but you're not required to at the end of 5 years. But again, it's flat rate for 5 years. And then the third way that we usually quote our business is just to purchase and install. And that's the way the industry's run for like the last 60 years. And that's just you purchase a lighting system up front, and then we add our additional services. Most people usually take our services along with on the purchase and installation option. And with that, that's in a nutshell. In the spirit of SBE, we really don't make this a salesy type of promotion with prices and that kind of thing. We just want to get the information out. But I will be happy to answer any questions in a general sense, and certainly if anybody wants to get an individualized quote, I'll be happy to help them out, and no obligation. Sometimes it's actually just good to get a market check and see what you're paying versus what we would charge, and we'll match our services and our prices up with anybody. And that's high intensity all the way to medium intensity. William, I see a question.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm a retired radio communications engineer. And when I got out of college in 1972, I got hired by CPI Microwave, and I built the Dallas South communications system from Dallas down into Austin, Westlake and Harlingen, and out into Beaumont past Houston, for television delivery into
Yeah.
Texas. Then we sold that system to Western Union, and I took all the money. Well, I didn't take it, but the company took all the money, and they put it into West Texas Microwave, Southwest Texas Transmission, and all of the facilities that we owned as MSO throughout Ohio and the Northeast. And at that time, I had over 100 towers or so
Wow.
I was responsible for, and I certainly would have liked to have found a group like you. Now that I'm looking back, I'm retired. I'm looking back on history. I'm surprised to see that you're in Austin, Texas, which was where my headquarters were. And our big NOC was at Dobie Center. And you probably see the microwave antenna still up there because my brother-in-law says they're still there. But that microwave system replaced the TD2 towers that came down from Dallas that brought the TV. And the problem was at 8 o'clock, it'd go bub, 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 and it would knock out the TV, and everybody throughout all of the Texas south of Austin had bad TV after 8 p.m., including Southwest Texas Transmission, which was one of the other companies we had, where the owners were in Del Rio, and they had Southwest Texas. So I got to build towers with all the money that they got from selling the Dallas South system to fix up West Texas Microwave and Southwest Texas Transmission. And I groomed everything for satellite communications. And then eventually they sold off that corporation to Times Mirror, and I left, and I'm now in New York. So my question to you is, do you know any of my old systems, if they're still out there? I had a 500-foot tower in Colorado City that replaced an H tower. I had Dobie Center. I had 1,000-foot towers out West Texas that we had microwave hung off of. It seems like that these days, the way that the whole situation has progressed, you must have seen business from all these people, all these cable TV operators. But I looked at that little chart you had, and you didn't go up north past Colorado City. There was a whole lot of cable TV operations going straight up north towards Amarillo, Lubbock and Amarillo, that you guys don't seem to have installations at. So it seems to me that there might be some clients out there in the cable TV business because they have lots of
Bill can hook you up.
William, I know a lot of the towers you're talking about. I walked by Dobie Center the other day. In fact, the University of Texas just bought that for student dorms to put kids in. It was a private dormitory prior to that. In Colorado City, not that way, that whole microwave chain. And all those towers, most all those towers are all still there. You know, they've been bought and sold and traded. And you know, the one thing we do is we work with a lot of communication companies, including cable companies. We got a whole lot of cable companies. Central Texas Telephone Co-op's an example. The one up in North Dakota, that's a cable company. And what they're looking for, and what most of our companies are, is they find that if you take a typical painted tower that's using incandescent, and you take all the cost components of it, and that's, you have to buy a lighting system periodically, you have to repair that system, you have to go and do the compliance and monitoring on it, you have to pay for the electricity on it, and then with the painted tower, you got to paint it. And we've looked at real customers with real costs, and we've done the analysis, and on average, they're paying about 50% more with their current solution than they would with our tower lighting as a service solution. And the reason why is because we buy lots of these. You guys will go to an SBE group and it's like, you know, I buy a lighting system every, 5 years or 10 years, not very often. We buy a lot of them and we specialize strictly in that. So that's really what the model's about. I equate it a little bit to Uber. If sometimes you got to get from point A to point B, and it's a lot less expensive to have someone else take care of it for you. They buy the vehicle, they repair the vehicle, they make sure it's got the proper compliance out there. They find the parking spot at night, all that sort of stuff. So we've really created a different model. And that's really the purpose, I think, of this last section, was to let you guys
I
know there's
really think that's
different way of
important.
doing it.
And the whole idea of all these guys saving money is so important because these were nickel and dime operations anyway. I mean, some of those towers were lethal. I had people killed on those towers, and they had these tower lifts on them, and with this stupid motor down at the bottom without a brake and stuff like that. And these things that I used to climb those towers when I was young, and I'm listening to you go, oh, how much should I have earned for a tower?
That's true. Yeah. And William, we're seeing a lot of WISP providers, the wireless providers, because they're all kind of startup operations. And you asked about the cable business. They've kind of consolidated everything into one or two larger groups and kind of have their own networks and that kind of thing. I work for Comcast and Viacom in the day and all that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
Hi, Roger Roth. A quick question. Suppose you have an outage. I'm assuming since you monitor your report, have a NOTAM posted. Once the NOTAM is posted, what is your normal rollout time to get it fixed and have the NOTAM abated? Also, I was curious, do you use your own crews in all of this, or do you contract these services out?
Yeah, those are both good questions. So we just reported this at our board meeting. And if there's an outage, our normal time to recognize it is about 2.5 minutes. We're polling every 5 minutes, so it's about 2.5 minutes before we recognize it. We average inputting a NOTAM in about 11 minutes. It needs to be less than 30. We have 0 that go beyond 30 minutes. Sometimes we'll look at it and we'll say, we might be able to do a remote diagnostic and fix it. Other times we're like, we're going to have to dispatch, let's put it under NOTAM. Our average time to repair the last one that we had report was about 4 days. And that includes some, remember, I've got, I don't know if there's anybody from Hearst. Is anybody here from Hearst Communications? So we got Hearst on top of Albuquerque, Sandia Peak. It's on top of a mountain, and you got snow and this, that, and the other. And you got others that are down on the ground. So it's averaging all those circumstances. So it's about 4 days is the average time that we had in our last report in terms of a repair. It used to be that the NOTAMs had a 14-day cycle on them, and you had to refresh them. You may remember that, Roger, back in the days, every 14 days you had to go do it. They eliminated that, and now you can have a longer time period and clear it. There's some folks out there that have abused that. The broadcasters typically are not that way. You guys are like us. We are compliance sticklers. That's what we are focused on. And unfortunately, there's all different kinds of tower owners out there. We have had some customers that have come to us that have been fined before, and they basically say, we don't have anything else to do with it. We want you guys to handle it. And we're happy to do that. I think the biggest compliance issues that we see are towers that are not painted to spec pursuant to the little paint chart that you hold up there to it. And then the 7/8 inch rule violation that I talked about. If you drive around, you'll see some folks that are out there doing that. So did that answer your question, Roger?
Yes, the only other question was, did you dispatch your own crews on all repairs?
Okay.
Or do you contract some of that out?
Yeah, so we have our own engineers and technicians in-house. The bulk of what we do is with those groups, other than the installations. On the installation portion of it, we always have our personnel there, our engineers always there, but we have about 10 or 12 long-standing partners that we've used across the country. There's 3 of them in particular that we work with nonstop, meaning like year after year. So they're not technically employees, but they are. We don't, by policy, we don't employ tower climbers on our staff. But we have long-standing relationships with folks that do. What our view is that we always have our own employees are the ones that interact with the customer, and we're fully responsible for everything associated with it. So it kind of varies depending on the circumstances, whether it's our guy or not, but we'll always be in charge of it.
Yeah, we just had a installation just a couple of months ago at Wichita, Kansas, just southeast of Wichita. And I'll say the crew was outstanding. The installation crew, it was very professional, very well done. I was very pleased with them. Everything so far has been great. I live 7 hours from the tower. So every time that we would get an alarm that there was something wrong with the lights, it was always very generic, like, okay, something is wrong. So I had to drive all the way out there to find out, oh, we just have a marker that's out. That wasn't that big of a deal. So now with LumenServe, I don't have to worry about any of that.
Joe, I did not recognize you until now. I recognize your name because you work with Andy, right? Andy Pilarczyk?
No, I work with Way Media Incorporated, but
no, you work on our team. You worked with Andy Pilarczyk.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Now I recognize the name, but yeah. They were outstanding. The whole process was outstanding. And we found a side benefit too, that we didn't know we were having an intermittent internet problem out there. And of course, when you can't communicate with your system, it alerts you too. And I instantly get an email saying, hey, we can't pull our equipment. Is there an internet problem? So we've had the advantage that we don't have to worry about the tower lights anymore. And we get some internet monitoring out there too.
Well, Joe, we'll send you a bottle of wine, okay?
Hey, there you go. I like that.
We appreciate the.
Get your $25 is coming in the mail.
I recognize your name, and thanks for your business, Joe.
Yeah, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, we really appreciate it. It's just been amazing to not have to worry about the headache every time there was an alarm or something that I had to go take care of it. So no, it's awesome.
I know we're out of time, Conrad. I'll just kind of close by saying that the reason why we invented this business is because exactly what Joe's talking about. We had built a bunch of towers, like 500 in various businesses I've been involved with. And most of them we were building were 199 feet. And
yeah, right.
And everybody says, well, why are you building 199 feet? Well,
yeah, we know why.
Yeah, everybody on this call knows why. And by the way, on the tower lighting poster, if you email mike.thompson@lumenserve.com or bear.poth@lumenserve.com, we'll get you one. Or Conrad, if you end up with email addresses or anything from the recording, we're happy to give those. 24 by 36 will come in a tube. The 11 by 17s will send by envelopes. And also, if anybody has any questions that they just need some help, we did one of these down in San Antonio the other day, and the guy said he'd done the Never Paint Your Tower Again on his own, and he never got his paperwork done correctly. So I said, call us up, we'll help you out. So we're actually trading emails. Our technical staff are getting him sorted out. So if you got any of that kind of stuff you just need some free help on, send us an email and we'll help you out.
Yeah, or any references in the area, we'd be happy to let you talk to.
Your website is helpful, and I can tell you that during our recent sale of our towers to Vertical Bridge, some questions came up, and I, of course, go to Dr. Google, and it took me to your site. So I'm familiar with the resources you have up there too.
Great.
So, well, listen, we thank you very much for the presentation. It's incredibly educational. I think it'll be a good resource to have the recording up on our site, and it's definitely something that all of us in the broadcasting business need to be aware of. So we thank you for that. And I guess with just one last thing, anybody on the call have any last questions before we adjourn?
We have the poll.
Okay.
And here it
got
is.
The poll. Yep.
So the good thing is people are going back to work. People are going back to the office. I do worry about the two folks who are at the transmitter site with their imaginary friend, but otherwise, well, we're hoping soon everybody's going to be back to, dare I say, normal. I just want to note here, if anybody who is on the call right now who is a member of SBE 15 and lives in the area and wants to be more involved, let me know. You can put your name in the chat for this call. Just tell me who you are. I think there's a handful of folks that are local who want to be involved, because we're going to send some info around about the holiday party and hopefully have more folks involved besides just the officers. We want to get more people to do more things so we can do more things like more planning and more activities. So either email me or you can put it in the chat right now, and we'll send some notes around. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate everybody being here.
Hey, y'all have a Merry Christmas and
Yes.
happy holidays.
Happy
okay?
Thanksgiving. Merry
Bye.
Christmas to you as well.
Happy Thanksgiving.
See you
And
later.
thanks everyone else for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Please remember to subscribe to SBE 15 New York City